There are 30 things you should skip on your next playthrough, and I'm counting them down all the way to number 1. Stick around for the end to find out the most useless thing in Valheim, and let me know in the comments where you disagree with my list. Let's kick things off with number 30, the crude bow. Unlike other bows, the crude cannot even shoot in a straight line. Further, you have other options that I consider better to capture deer. For instance, the flint spear is a cheaper craft and more accurate, or forgo ranged attacks altogether and use a cooking station to pin the beast. Flame metal armor is the game's newest heavyset, and it makes the list for the pathetic heat resistance it provides. In my experience, it hardly makes a difference in reducing damage in the hot waters of the Ashlands and is completely negligible in lava. I always choose the Ask or Embla when venturing into the Ash. I never use tower shields in Valheim due to the movement speed penalty and lack of parry bonus. Tower shields are inferior to other classes of shields in almost every way, and for that reason, the entire class of shield makes my list. While I make an exception for the flint spear and often use it in my playthroughs, I consider the spear weapon class to be the worst in the game. For one, these weapons struggle mightily hitting targets below or above, especially enemy spawners like body piles. Secondly, while using the secondary attack can be nice, you can get yourself in a pickle if you are unable to retrieve it quickly following a toss. The first and perhaps only forsaken power on my worst item list is the Elder Trophy. As you know, this power increases your woodcutting proficiency, which can be helpful. However, in practice, I almost never opt to change my power for this one when woodcutting. Number 25 is my personal attack on light sources with the Devager Circlet and Lantern. I never purchase the Circlet and craft lanterns, but often opt for the standard torches or even simpler light sources. While this may be controversial, I will no doubt top it later in this video. The most unique and elusive weapon in the game, the Dirnwind's Sword, is unfortunately not worth the effort to craft. If you don't know, only one of these swords can be acquired for any given world by visiting 3 mysterious locations in the Ashlands for each of the sword fragments. Unfortunately, while the single-handed sword adds fire damage, it is simply outclassed by the gemstone versions of the Needhog. Next on the list are coins. I know, you obviously do need these to purchase the powerful items from Haldor, but as you will find out, coins quickly lose their value and you will later find yourself with more than you could ever spend. Soon, its only purpose will be to decorate your home with treasure chests and coin piles. The bronze armor, in my opinion, is a completely skippable armor set. The grind for ores to craft bronze is a grueling one. Rather than craft this armor, make the tools you need and opt for the troll armor instead. Resin, like coins, again have their purpose with things like fire arrows and fuel for torches very quickly lose their usefulness despite being easily accessible. For their massive abundance and minimal use cases in the mid-game, they make the list. Fireworks were added with the release of Hilder's Request and are purchasable from her shop once you find the elusive Dvager. However, these are purely aesthetic items, and for me, I never purchased them. Your first armor in Valheim, the Reg armor, with its meager defense rating, serves next to no purpose aside from saving the boars from the sight of your naked body. Make sure you craft the leather armor ASAP when arriving in the meadows. Most skills in Valheim provide an outstanding benefit when leveling them. Unfortunately, the swimming skill is not one of them. In this game, you effectively never want to find yourself in water, as it drains your stamina quickly and gives you the wet debuff. As a result, you want to avoid water if all possible, making this skill irrelevant. The Ashlands introduces siege weapons into Valheim, and while the catapult might seem cool, it's not very useful. In practice, either use the battering ram or simply a hoe to climb fortress walls as a much simpler and elegant solution. However, you can launch yourself with the feather cape, which is a great time. Crystal must be the worst and most difficult to use building material, and on top of all that, it allows you to craft the forgettable weapon in the crystal battle axe. The battle axe enjoyers out there may disagree, but for me, I never prioritize gathering this material. Bronze and iron quickly become 2 of the most tedious resources to gather in Valheim, and for that reason, I never recommend anyone use the precious ore on bronze and iron arrows. Plus, the Bronze and Iron Ages provide better alternatives for arrows in the fire and poison. For these 2 reasons, stop making these arrows. I know, ghosts are not items, but my goodness they are useless. And terribly annoying. For one, they do not drop any loot, not a trophy, nothing. On top of all that, they pack a punch and can easily ruin your day in a burial chamber. If I am lucky, I can escape the Black Forest having never seen one. Boats in Valheim are useful and most of the time required for you to progress to the swamp and beyond. However, never, ever make the raft. This thing has no storage capacity and moves at a snail's pace. Remember, your starting island will almost always be connected to a black forest. Smelt some bronze, craft nails, and set sail on a carve. You can thank me later. If you have followed my channel for any length of time, you probably know I'm not much of a builder. For this reason, the blue and red jute make the list. All these items are good for making decorative items. Ain't nobody have time for that. While the ashwood bed looks great, there's no reason to build it at all. You would think the ashwood would provide more comfort than the regular or dragon bed, but in fact, that's not the case. The ashwood provides one comfort being equivalent to the regular and one less than the dragon. For this reason, the dragon is all you need. Kicking off the top 10, we must tip our caps to the fishing gear in rod and hat. If you have not yet learned, fishing in this game is not worth your time. Quite simply, the rewards are limited with only a few exceptions, with many better options for food than fish. Surprisingly, the Ashlands gave us all kinds of useless items, of which a whole bunch of them can be found entering our top 10, like the charcoal resin. This item serves one single purpose, and that is the craft of 3 green pots. While these pots provide a small amount of storage, simply craft a chest instead. The Mistlands added a few devices to protect our bases, starting with ballistas. For me, I never build these, and I'll tell you why. 1, they're pretty expensive, requiring lots of black metal as well as iron and refined iter for mechanical springs. And that doesn't even include the cost of crafting their missiles to arm them. 2nd, my goodness, these have killed me many times. These contraptions will attack any target in their view, including you, unless you give them a trophy to target only a single creature. For me, they are not worth crafting. And that leads nicely into number 7 with traps. Even more useless than ballistas, sometimes I forget these are even in the game. Like the ballistas before, these are also super expensive to build, plus they eventually break after 10 uses. Not for me. Before we get into the top 5, we have the anti-food in butte berries and rotten meat. I will surely get some comments arguing these are useful. Personally, I hardly ever find myself needing to change my food, and am happy to wait for my existing buffs to wear off before changing up. It's just not worth occupying an inventory slot for one of these items. Breaking in as our 5th most forgettable item is the tankard. All this does is, yes, allows you to drink a mead from it, but get this, you can drink a mead just fine without it. Unless you're heading down to your local Norse pub, there is no need to craft this one. Number 4 are items that drive me nuts, navigating the Ashlands in the aspen hide, neck, pelvis, ribcage, and skull. One of the pain points of the Ashlands is how quickly your inventory fills with the various drops the biome provides, and these bones certainly do not help. Fortunately, they are super useful when you get them all, right? Right? No! Their only purpose is crafting this silly aspen skeleton. Absolutely maddening. Continuing our list of useless Ashlands items is the charred skull. It has only 2 purposes in crafting a skull pile and bone throne. Neither have any purpose aside from decoration, and further, the bone throne provides no greater comfort bonus than the thrones before it. At least it looks cool. And before getting to the number 1 most useless thing in Valheim, we have smoke bombs. All these things do is create a cloud of smoke that can, of course, also damage the player who threw it. Supposedly, these can extinguish fires, but in my experience, it's just better to deconstruct the flaming build piece, completely removing the need for the bomb. This item is not it. And number 1, as you've likely encountered on your swamp journeys, are these water-filled wells. The reason this marks the top of this list is because of such a tease they are. When first coming across them, you would assume there has to be a way to get to the bottom, and there has to be some great loot at their base. Unfortunately, that's not the case. These wells are completely empty and utterly useless. And if listing all these terrible items has your spirits down, check out the opposite of this video in my ranking of Valheim's 40 best items right here.